Joe Rogan kicked off his latest podcast episode with a direct, unfiltered assessment of the recent turmoil surrounding Rachel Zegler, Disney's troubled live-action adaptation of a beloved classic, and the chaotic fallout that has put the studio on high alert. The moment he brought up the controversy, he made it clear he wasn't going to spare anyone's feelings.
So with Snow White, let's go through this, right? There's no prince. Woman doesn't need a prince.
Oh, Lord.
Really? Okay, good luck back then.
He said the situation illustrated a perfect storm of corporate overreach, creative misfires, and an actor's candid public statements, all converging to create one of the most talked about Hollywood controversies in recent memory. Right from the start, he seemed astonished by how swiftly a project that had once carried so much promise descended into a state of near constant damage control.
It's just so stupid. Like, of course you do. It doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
He began by recounting how Rachel Zegler was supposed to represent a fresh new face for a legendary tale, someone who could appeal to a younger audience and still maintain enough reverence for the source material to woo older fans. But as Joe Rogan described it, that perfect balance never materialized. Instead, from the earliest press events, Rachel Zegler emerged as a lightning rod of contention.
And I get it, there's a difference between spoiling and whatever, but to go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control over that.
Even though initial reports suggested the film would succeed on the strength of its well-known story and star-studded cast, the flood of public criticism arrived more quickly and more forcefully than anyone at Disney could have anticipated. According to Rogan, the box office plunge might have happened anyway, given the questionable direction the filmmakers had taken, but Rachel Zegler's outspoken approach seemed to magnify every underlying flaw.
Then I can't bitch about it. This girl took the money and then decided that she wanted to go out there and, you know what, I'm going to take my stand. Well, you should have made that stand before you took the money to promote a film, because that's not in line with your job description.
He spent a few minutes outlining how Disney, historically, has navigated controversies surrounding its big franchises. Even a massive conglomerate like Disney isn't immune to negative press. But Joe Rogan was particularly stunned by how the scale of this backlash seemed to catch the company flat-footed. He pointed out that Bob Iger, known for his hands-on leadership style, appeared genuinely rattled.
I think this is their policies coming back to bite them. They went woke.
Yeah.
She went out and said stuff woke that was going to hurt the film. They couldn't come out and go against her, because then you're going after somebody for saying what you say you believe.
Typically, corporate synergy ensures that the right talking points reach the right channels at the right time. But in this case, the entire PR machine sputtered. Rogan interpreted this as a sign that Disney executives had underestimated the fervor of fans who might resent drastic changes to such an iconic story, and that they definitely hadn't planned for the lead actor's propensity to speak her mind. He devoted a substantial portion of his monologue to dissecting Rachel Zegler's role in the fiasco.
But at the same time, I think going forward, they're going to be like, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
Tight-lipped. Otherwise, guess what? We're clawing back some money.
Yeah. This would have been a lot better if they, had a strong male along with her, a prince, if it wasn't about socialism.
While he made it clear that blaming her for everything would be both lazy and inaccurate, Joe Rogan also noted that her behavior in interviews, on social media, and especially during what was supposed to be a controlled appearance on The View, turned into focal points for fan outrage. Rogan explained that some critics saw her public stance as dismissive toward the original themes of the classic story, a charge that might have been unfair had the film not made massive alterations to the narrative structure.
I think they could have done all that woke. You want to call woke? They could have done all that still, and as long as she had gone out and been like, we just have a different story. I like the old story, but we're doing a different one this time.
You're probably right.
The backlash would have been 10 times.
Yes. You're probably right.
But once the adaptation's new direction drew scorn from nostalgic fans, anything Rachel Zegler said that deviated from the established Disney messaging practically became tinder for an ever-growing fire. He elaborated on how fan bases can be especially protective of cherished material, and that modernization efforts are a risky venture in the best of times. The moment there's a whiff of disrespect toward the spirit of a well-loved story,
That said, our primary purpose is to entertain, and where we can entertain responsibly, obviously we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world, but the first thing we need to do is entertain.
the audience can react with disproportionate intensity. Rachel Zegler, in a sense, ended up front and center, absorbing the brunt of that reaction. Joe Rogan paused to note how the film's reworked plot, the altered visuals, and the redrawn character arcs might have alienated fans on their own, but once the lead actor started voicing strong personal opinions, everything spiraled into a place Disney would have never anticipated.
Jonah Platt, whose father helped produce the latest Snow White film, had some very harsh words for star Rachel Zegler.
For context, Variety wrote a report recently titled Inside Disney's Snow White Fiasco, Death Threats, Beefed Up Security, and a Social Media Guru for Rachel Zegler.
He added that she might have had valid points about representation and modern perspectives, but her timing and tone exacerbated tensions instead of alleviating them. Next, he touched on Disney's behind-the-scenes response, something that fascinated him given the size of the corporation. He acknowledged that big studios will always have a standard approach to quelling controversy, schedule a series of interviews, dispatch the star onto friendly daytime talk shows, and try to control the narrative by leaning on pre-established relationships with mainstream media outlets.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
But Rogan wasn't impressed by how it all played out. In his view, it felt mechanical, obvious, and doomed the moment that Rachel Zegler showed signs of wanting to deviate from the polished, corporately approved talking points. He emphasized that if Disney was set on controlling the messaging, it needed to ensure absolute coordination, which it clearly failed to do when the meltdown occurred on The View. The meltdown fascinated Joe Rogan as much as it did the public.
So even though woke in some sense feels like it's dead, it still has to run its course through the system. The ghosts have to get out of the machine in essence.
Here's how he recapped it. Rachel Zegler showed up on set with every intention of sharing her personal political stances, which ran counter to the carefully curated direction Disney wanted her to follow. Rogan noted that in a live broadcast environment, producers have minimal ways to rein in a guest who's determined to speak her mind. Apparently, tensions rose to such a degree that she ended up getting removed from the set before the segment could even take shape.
You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work.
The show's hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, found themselves grappling with a sudden gap in their live broadcast, forced to pivot to unrelated chatter without warning. Rogan thought the optics of such an event were catastrophic for Disney. This was supposed to be a chance to calm the waters, but it publicly exposed how severe the behind-the-scenes disagreements really were.
This is like
An honest
golden employment opportunity for dwarves.
There's not that many scripts that come down the pike.
No, it's 7 of them.
From there, he turned his attention to the question of whether Rachel Zegler was entirely at fault or simply the product of a situation fraught with conflicting objectives. He acknowledged that some of her defenders claimed the film itself carried fundamental flaws. Even if she had been perfectly on message, they argue, the poor reception might have been inevitable.
But because I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is, this is not right. This is demeaning. And they were like, what? We just want to work. We're dwarves. So, ho, ho, ho.
Joe Rogan, however, saw it somewhat differently. He surmised that while yes, the adaptation seemed to deviate uncomfortably far from the original, her outspoken demeanor and off-script commentary magnified every misstep. By the time they were done, any hope of salvaging a modest success at the box office evaporated into a haze of online debate and critical disdain.
For Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen, because there's another one in town.
In describing the fiasco with The View, Rogan found it telling that producers apparently tried to guide Rachel Zegler's talking points in real time, only to face her refusal. Instead of smoothing over the controversy, the segment simply imploded, never airing a meaningful interview. Rogan suggested that Disney's attempts to muzzle her were misguided.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
If they'd recognized that she was going to speak her mind anyway, they could have tried to find a middle ground that didn't come off as so forceful, but the abrupt removal from the set heightened the sense that the studio was at war with its own star. Rogen referred to it as a PR fiasco of epic proportions, the kind of story that becomes the butt of jokes in late-night monologues and across social media. He didn't stop there.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
Joe Rogan talked about Gal Gadot's involvement in the project. Initially, some fans hoped Gadot's star power would balance the film's promotional campaign, possibly offsetting any negativity that might arise from creative decisions. Yet, according to Rogan, as the Rachel Zegler controversy grew, Gal Gadot's part faded into the background. Rumors about disagreements between the two actors circulated.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
Although nothing concrete emerged beyond the suggestion that Rachel Zegler might have criticized Gadot's political views at some point. Rogan mused that even if these rumors were exaggerated, their very existence revealed how frayed the atmosphere must have been within the production. He wasn't shy in pointing out that a strong bond between the lead performers might have generated positive buzz, but instead, friction, or at least the widespread perception of it, contributed to a sense that the cast lacked unity.
And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible.
Rogan questioned the approach Disney took, especially when references surfaced to a past controversy involving Amandla Stenberg and The View. He observed that sending an embattled Disney star onto a daytime talk show was a tactic that had already shown cracks. Fans pick up on formulaic PR strategies, and when they sense it's just an orchestrated display, they can react with increased cynicism.
In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
In the Amandla Stenberg case, the interview segment felt unnatural to many observers, and it ended up backfiring. With Rachel Zegler, it never even made it to the stage of a forced exchange, because the meltdown happened first. Rogan joked that perhaps Disney should have learned its lesson the first time around, that controlling a narrative in front of a live audience requires more than just a carefully composed script in the star's hands.
It basically, this movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism.
It requires buy-in from the star herself, and that evidently wasn't happening. He then moved into a critical look at Bob Iger's role. Despite being known for his acute understanding of branding and synergy, even Iger hadn't managed to steer the situation into calmer waters. Joe Rogan framed this as one of Disney's largest PR challenges in recent memory. He speculated that if the negative coverage had been purely online chatter, Disney might have contained it. But when major critics who usually support Disney films began to distance themselves, it signaled a seismic shift. For Rogan, this indicated that the usual corporate outreach and spin weren't working. The fiasco on The View was too public, and the box office returns were too dismal to brush aside. Rogan noted that one particularly jarring element of the entire saga was how some members of Disney's extended corporate family apparently took to social media to criticize Rachel Zegler. He cited a story about a Disney producer's son who posted disparaging remarks about her stance. In Rogan's eyes, that turn of events hinted at a meltdown that was not just about an actor and a studio, but a fracturing within the ecosystem that supported the film. He understood why Rachel Zegler might take offense. It could only amplify her suspicion that Disney as a whole was more interested in reining her in than acknowledging her perspective. For a moment, Rogan considered the broader implications for Rachel Zegler's career. He mentioned how some corners of the internet have labeled her as box office poison, attributing multiple missteps to her. He wondered aloud if that was fair or if it overlooked deeper problems with how the adaptation was conceived and promoted. From his standpoint, labeling someone as box office poison can oversimplify a tangle of creative, corporate, and personal factors. Still, he acknowledged that if a star's presence consistently appears to correlate with a film's underperformance, studios might grow cautious. He cautioned that while time could soften the memory of this fiasco, it might also follow her for years unless she manages to separate herself from the negativity that engulfed this particular project. He then circled back to how the fiasco overshadowed any discussion of the film's actual content. He suggested that some people who did manage to see the adaptation believed it had merits. Maybe some modern twists were compelling, or certain production values were impressive, but the film's reception was thoroughly buried beneath a storm of commentary on Rachel Zegler's public persona and Disney's attempted damage control. From Rogen's perspective, that's what happens when a corporation fails to present a cohesive front and the lead actor rejects the corporate script. Every potential talking point is quickly replaced by a more sensational narrative. The meltdown, the behind-the-scenes arguments, the canceled interviews. He saw it as a classic example of how quickly an adaptation that should have succeeded based on name recognition alone could fall apart. Joe Rogan also contrasted Gal Gadot's relatively low profile in the aftermath of the controversy with Rachel Zegler's highly public approach. Gadot seemed to keep her distance, rarely addressing the drama except in the most routine promotional statements. Rogan speculated that staying silent might have been a smart move. She could avoid further fueling the conflict and come off as a consummate professional. But he added that fans who had hoped to see the synergy between these two strong performers were left empty-handed. Instead of praising or critiquing their on-screen chemistry, people ended up fixated on behind-the-scenes turbulence. Towards the latter part of his commentary, Rogan explored how Disney might adapt its tactics in future. He suspected the company would keep making live-action remakes of cherished properties, but the entire fiasco might drive them to be more conservative. He imagined that Bob Iger and his team might insist on stricter guidelines for how stars engage with the press, or even social media. But Rogan warned that such top-down control can spark another wave of controversy if an actor feels silenced. He wryly noted that modern audiences can smell inauthenticity, so if a star goes on The View or any other talk show with lines that sound too rehearsed, the effort to rehabilitate the film's reputation might only deepen public skepticism. He said the meltdown also underscored how quickly tensions can escalate in a multimedia environment, where leaks, eyewitness accounts, and instantaneous social media updates shape the public narrative. In the time it takes for a producer to try to shut down an off-topic statement on live TV, 500,000 people might have already tweeted about the conflict. That velocity of information exchange, in Joe Rogan's view, amplifies every misstep, leaving Disney perpetually playing catch-up. He then told listeners that the fiasco could have been less destructive had the film remained faithful to the emotional essence of the original. When fans feel their childhood favorites are honored, they can be tolerant of certain updates, even modern twists. But if the new adaptation appears to disregard everything that made the original special, fans tend to react harshly. And once the leading star begins stirring the pot with remarks that seem to confirm the audience's fears that the beloved source material was abandoned for some ill-conceived modern approach, it's game over. Rogan's stance was that the meltdown on The View served as the culminating moment where a smoldering situation burst into full-blown conflagration. He expounded on how this entire fiasco stands as a cautionary tale for how studios blend modern commentary with traditional storytelling. Taking a cherished narrative and updating it so drastically might have succeeded under different circumstances, but the synergy of creative miscalculations and a lead actor unafraid to challenge the official narrative proved unstoppable. Rogan's own words: "You can't fix it once the public decides they hate it." That's precisely the point he felt Disney reached after the meltdown. The film had become a punchline, and any promotional efforts would likely fall on deaf ears. Rogan then described what the meltdown meant for Rachel Zegler personally. It wasn't just that Disney might try to remove her from future live appearances or control what she can say in interviews. It was that she found herself trapped in a standoff, wanting to assert her autonomy and beliefs, while the studio insisted her outspokenness was detrimental to their bottom line. Rogan himself said that actors often must strike a delicate balance between personal conviction and professional obligations, especially for big-budget projects that rely on a carefully honed brand. In his opinion, that line was nowhere near being found in this scenario. He went on to clarify that he wasn't dismissing Rachel Zegler's desire to speak freely about broader issues. In fact, Joe Rogan has long championed open discourse, so he could sympathize with any performer who wants to be honest rather than merely reciting safe, corporate-approved statements. However, he also recognized that from Disney's perspective, an actor steering conversation conversations into polarizing political territory, especially during a high-stakes press tour, could be catastrophic. He saw the tension as an inevitable collision between an entertainment giant determined to protect its intellectual property and a rising star determined to use her platform in a way she deemed sincere. The meltdown was the direct outcome of that collision, and it left the entire production in a precarious place. Rogan noted the irony that all the negative chatter might push Disney to release the film on streaming platforms earlier than planned, effectively conceding defeat. If the theatrical run had bombed, continuing to pour money into a fruitless promotion could do more harm than good. He guessed that Disney might prefer a quick pivot, release the film online, let it fade from public consciousness, and move on to the next project. But he also suspected the fiasco would linger in the broader conversation about Disney's live-action strategy. The memory of how thoroughly things went wrong here would persist, shaping how the company approaches future remakes. He summed up the fiasco as a multi-layered failure. An adaptation that alienated fans with radical changes, a lead actor whose public persona inflamed existing tensions, a studio caught between controlling the narrative and respecting the star's independence, and a meltdown that cemented the entire project's downfall in real time. The biggest takeaway for Rogan was that fans will not automatically accept major shifts in their beloved stories, nor will they passively swallow promotional spins that feel contrived. In an era of instantaneous social media, the meltdown with Rachel Zegler on The View and the subsequent rumors about behind-the-scenes chaos only confirmed that authenticity, or the lack thereof, can make or break a film's reception. He also touched on the role of Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, who were thrust into an awkward position when the segment collapsed. Rogan said that while The View is known for tackling controversy, having to improvise around a no-show guest created a distinctly surreal moment of live television. The scramble to fill those empty minutes became a stark reminder of how thoroughly Disney's plan had unraveled. In normal circumstances, a meticulously arranged press appearance would never end in a star being escorted off the set, but here, it played out in spectacular fashion. Though it never aired publicly, enough eyewitness accounts surfaced to leave no doubt that the meltdown had been intense and chaotic. In concluding his marathon discussion, Joe Rogan made a final observation about how these events will shape the conversation around big-budget remakes. He said that whenever a studio attempts to rewrite a classic story, they have to brace themselves for the possibility that die-hard fans will revolt. He added that this risk grows exponentially if the studio then relies on a single star to carry the marketing campaign, especially if that star is prone to unscripted commentary. In this case, Rachel Zegler became the face of the adaptation, but also its most controversial figure, overshadowing even major talents like Gal Gadot. Disney hoped for synergy and star power. They ended up with a conflagration that overshadowed the film's merits or demerits entirely. For Rogan, that was the defining takeaway. There was no single miscalculation, but a cascade of them, all converging to produce an unmitigated PR and box office disaster. He also pointed out that for Bob Iger, who enjoys a reputation as a strategic mastermind, this represented a glaring misstep. Perhaps no one could have foreseen how badly things would go. But Rogan said that even a casual observer might have noticed the potential for discord between an outspoken actor and a famously protective studio. If anything, it should prompt Disney to reassess how it handles edgy or politically conscious performers. Doing so might mean establishing clearer guidelines early on, or being more upfront about what the studio expects from its stars during a press tour. But if the meltdown taught us anything, Rogan insisted, it's that forcing an actor into a box they refuse to inhabit can blow up with unprecedented force. He ended his discourse by reminding everyone that in the court of public opinion, once a film's branding is tarnished, it's nearly impossible to salvage. The meltdown, with all its swirling rumors and real-time revelations, sealed the film's fate. Whether that was fair to Rachel Zegler, to Gal Gadot, or even to the creative team who worked on the adaptation is another matter. The result is the same. A heavily hyped remake sank under the weight of controversies, culminating in an abrupt meltdown on a daytime talk show and the unrelenting scorn of fans who felt betrayed. Joe Rogan didn't mince words about how humiliating the entire scenario must be for Disney, for Rachel Zegler, and for anyone who had once pinned their hopes on the film's success. He suggested that the fiasco might become a caution cautionary reference point for years to come. A prime example of how big-budget blockbusters can fail spectacularly if they mishandle source material, star power, and fan expectations. In a sense, The Meltdown told a story about the limits of corporate spin, the unpredictability of live interviews, and the intensifying appetite the public has for behind-the-scenes drama. Rachel Zegler's outspokenness, for better or worse, played directly into that appetite, and the resulting conflagration is likely to remain a hot topic whenever people discuss the pitfalls of remaking classic Disney properties. According to Rogan, the entire saga might even live on in Hollywood lore as a new benchmark for how quickly a beloved brand can turn toxic when creative decisions clash with an actor's willingness to speak her mind. In the end, he chalked it up to a massive misalignment among all parties involved. Rachel Zegler wanted to articulate broader social and political points. Disney wanted a safe, sanitized promotional campaign. Fans wanted a faithful rendition of a timeless story. Journalists wanted a front-row seat to the controversy. And what they all got was a meltdown that overshadowed every other aspect of the film. Joe Rogan closed his commentary by reiterating how extraordinary it was to witness such a confluence of events, then promised he'd revisit the story if any new twists emerged. From the way he told it, the meltdown was a defining moment that both humiliated Rachel Zegler in front of a massive audience and exposed Disney's vulnerability when its stars break rank. The Snow White adaptation, once seen as a guaranteed hit, stands now as a glaring testament to how swiftly a project can implode, especially when its biggest name inadvertently becomes
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
It's too stressful, and frankly, I do not have the nerve.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The right to buy Cosby sweaters?
Rachel Zegler had envisioned her role as Snow White to be a crowning achievement, a chance to shine under the iconic Disney banner and join the storied lineage of live-action heroines who had become cinematic legends. From the moment she had secured the part in the 2025 adaptation, she embraced the project with energy and optimism, ready to inhabit a fairy tale character who had once delighted audiences in the 1937 animated masterpiece.
Minecraft in the United States in one weekend made more money than Snow White has made globally after 3 weekends.
She often spoke in interviews about wanting to bring a contemporary perspective to Snow White. She championed modern ideas of independence and self-determination, insisting that a contemporary princess should represent something more than just a damsel awaiting rescue. The approach initially seemed fresh and engaging to Disney executives. They welcomed the notion that a new audience might appreciate a braver, bolder Snow White who took control of her destiny. Behind the scenes, however, tensions brewed.
Rachel Zegler then inexplicably continued to post herself in an empty theater for her own movie. She's literally the only person there. Meanwhile, the experience at Minecraft goes something like this.
Chicken
The film's production timeline shifted repeatedly. What was once slated for a 2024 release slipped to 2025 because of complications arising from multiple rounds of reshoots. Various creative leads came and went, each with a different vision for how the story should unfold. Greta Gerwig contributed to the screenplay, attempting to weave together classic fairy tale motifs with more grounded, modern storytelling.
The future of Hollywood is being battled out right now in theaters as 2 live-action remakes from the biggest studios in Hollywood go head-to-head.
The pressure from Disney's top brass, including CEO Bob Iger and influential board members, weighed heavily on the production. Their expectations were immense, given that Snow White was among the most treasured properties in the Disney canon. At first, Rachel Zegler felt no cause for alarm. Yes, the script changed often, and yes, the production environment occasionally became hectic, but major Hollywood blockbusters commonly endured such upheavals. She took it in stride.
Warner Brothers' Minecraft movie versus Disney's Snow White, which in theory should be quite a battle, but it's not even a fair fight.
regarding the metamorphoses as part of the creative process. Then came whisperings about a possible conflict with her co-star Gal Gadot, who portrayed the evil queen. Despite an outward appearance of cordiality, rumors indicated friction between the two. Rachel Zegler's outspoken commentary about the original 1937 film had stirred backlash from longtime fans, many of whom accused her of dismissing the classic's cherished legacy.
You know what's interesting about all of this is that the only person waiting in line to see Snow White was Rachel Zegler.
That negativity seemed to seep onto the set, culminating in a series of on-camera tensions that threatened to derail entire shooting days. According to insiders, these disputes peaked during the filming of the climactic act in which Snow White and her 7 companions confront the evil queen in a sinister fortress. The scene proved incredibly difficult to capture, requiring numerous takes to address pacing and visual continuity. Rachel Zegler had strong opinions about how the heroine should be portrayed.
And everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Resilient and morally resolute, while Gal Gadot explored a darker, more improvisational approach to the antagonist. Each performer's intensity clashed, sometimes exploding into an unrehearsed battle of wills that overshadowed the carefully scripted dialogue. The production team struggled to cope, often having to reset after each failed attempt. On one particularly chaotic day,
Rachel Zegler then inexplicably continued to post herself in an empty theater for her own movie. She's literally the only person there. And do you not understand how humiliating this is?
It reportedly took over 24 takes just to finalize a single piece of the scene. Disney executives, worried about negative publicity, tried to keep the details under wraps. Nonetheless, rumors trickled into the public sphere, suggesting that the tension between the two leads was more than just creative differences. Rachel Zegler was sometimes painted as overly zealous, fixated on a vision that no one else fully shared.
Meanwhile, the experience at Minecraft goes something like this.
Gal Gadot, established as a Hollywood powerhouse, was said to be exasperated by the seemingly endless stream of rewrites and the mounting drama. The atmosphere on set became so fraught that the cast and crew began distancing themselves from both leads, focusing solely on their individual tasks to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, Disney faced an even larger issue.
And the cops had to escort the rowdy teenagers out. The Minecraft movie is doing something magical. It's creating a live audience reaction event.
The overall direction of the film, the multiple reshoots and narrative overhauls generated conflicting footage that was difficult to stitch together into a coherent storyline. Plot points kept shifting. In one iteration, Snow White's arc emphasized self-discovery and empathy toward the forest creatures and villagers, while another iteration placed heavier focus on the evil queen's motivations.
Encouraging to see a movie that decided to do the opposite of Snow White, which is, according to all available reviews, including from the people that I trust the very most on this platform,
The overall tone veered from whimsical adventure to grim moral fable. The executives, anxious about the ballooning budget and the constant changes, quietly wondered if the entire project should be shelved or significantly reworked. News broke in the late summer of 2024 that the film's planned United Kingdom premiere, a high-profile event that was supposed to bolster international excitement, had been abruptly canceled.
It is non-political. The Minecraft movie does not try to beat you and box you about the ears with the message.
Disney officials provided vague explanations, citing scheduling conflicts and a desire to concentrate on finishing touches. Most observers, however, linked the cancellation directly to the swirling controversies and speculated that the studio feared a barrage of tough questions during press events. Rachel Zegler, who had eagerly anticipated the red carpet moment, was profoundly disappointed.
It is just silly fun for kids, which is what a kids movie should be.
She had hoped that once people saw glimpses of the finished product, the negativity would subside. Instead, the controversies escalated. Stories circulated about behind-the-scenes arguments involving not just Zegler and Godot, but also the director and key producers. The third act, in particular, had undergone so many versions that no one was sure which iteration would make it into the final cut.
Whereas the Snow White model is the message ad infinitum, shoved directly up your ass, and, most importantly, in the most insufferable possible way, like screamed at you.
Adding to the tension, the storyline's potential departure from the beloved fairy tale essence sparked outrage among die-hard Disney fans. Critics of the adaptation labeled the film a misguided attempt to forcibly modernize a classic, eroding the themes of innocence and kindness that had made Snow White iconic. Yet the biggest shock arrived shortly thereafter.
And so let's see how they fared against each other. The Minecraft movie breaks box office record with $300 million global opening, while woke Snow White slips again.
Disney, facing a maelstrom of bad press, surprise announced that it was in the early stages of planning a completely new Snow White remake, this time with rising star Jenna Ortega reportedly cast in the title role. No major press conference was held, but the rumor made its way through Hollywood circles and onto social media. A hush fell over the industry, as no one knew exactly why Disney would embark on a new adaptation while the 2025 project with Rachel Zegler was still in limbo.
In theory, Snow White should as well. Snow White's the movie that made Disney, the studio. They should have been more cautious and careful with their own IP.
Had they lost faith in the existing version? Were they trying to pivot away from the controversies by starting fresh with an entirely new creative team? Rachel Zegler's reaction to the announcement was immediate and intense. According to insiders, she was blindsided by the move and felt personally betrayed by the studio she had once trusted to support her vision. She reportedly learned about the plan the same way fans did, through online speculation and cryptic confirmations from unnamed Disney representatives. For someone who had poured so much into making the 2025 Snow White a success, this news felt like a staggering blow. Some witnesses claimed that she broke down in tears upon hearing that Jenna Ortega was being courted, if not already secured, for an alternate take on the story. What hurt Zegler the most was the sudden shift in perception. She had hoped that any negativity surrounding the project was merely a rough patch, something that strong marketing and a polished final product could overcome. Now, with Disney apparently hedging its bets on another version featuring Jenna Ortega, it appeared that the studio no longer believed in the existing adaptation enough to stand behind it unequivocally.
The Disney Snow White, faithfully adapted, would have made $1 billion. Everyone knows this.
Word spread that the internal executives were looking for a clean break from the mounting controversies. A new cast, a new script, and an approach more firmly anchored to the beloved traditions that fans might find more palatable. The tension behind closed doors increased tenfold. Those in the know said that Bob Iger and other top leaders were in damage control mode, trying to figure out how to salvage or repurpose the 2025 movie without risking further backlash. Some advocated for a quiet theatrical release with minimal fanfare, followed by an eventual addition to Disney+. Others suggested that the film skip Disney Plus altogether to avoid overshadowing or confusing audiences once the Jenna Ortega-led project went into production. The swirling rumors of a potential rejection from Disney's own streaming service unsettled everyone who had worked on the Zegler version, none more so than Rachel herself. For Rachel Zegler, the notion of her Snow White not appearing on Disney Plus felt like an existential threat to her career. The platform, after all, was Disney's home base for showcasing their IP, from vintage classics to brand new exclusives.
So the film received a low score on Rotten Tomatoes, but 87% fan approval. The rankings were very similar to Snow White, which received a 40% critic score, 73% audience ranking. Yeah, right.
A refusal to include her film there, or even a significant delay, implied that the studio wanted to keep it at arm's length, perhaps to protect the Disney brand from further damage. Compounding her distress were the online reactions. An increasing number of fans and pundits dissected every public statement she had made, seizing upon moments when her comments about the 1937 original seemed dismissive or disrespectful. Memes circulated suggesting that she had single-handedly tanked the live-action Snow White for Disney. It was an unfair charge, but under the glare of social media, perception often eclipsed nuance. The friction between Zegler and Gal Gadot, while still relevant, took a backseat to the more catastrophic implications of Disney's pivot to Jenna Ortega. Some industry observers argued that Rachel Zegler's strong opinions had endangered the project, and that the studio, tired of the drama, decided to seek a safer, more unifying presence in Ortega.
However, the Minecraft movie was not plagued by controversy of being woke,
who had recently risen to fame in various other successful roles. Others believed that the blame lay with Disney executives who had never provided a clear, consistent direction for the adaptation. They accused the higher-ups of mishandling the creative process, leading to an incoherent vision that no amount of reshoots could fully salvage. In the midst of these swirling questions, a previously filmed sequence, once considered pivotal, was removed from the final cut due to continuity issues and the near impossibility of integrating reshot material. Rachel Zegler had felt that scene showcased her best emotional work, something that would have solidified her portrayal of Snow White as a principled, determined heroine. Yet from the standpoint of the new vision that Disney was forming, the scene now seemed to conflict with the final version's pace and tone. Some conspiratorially suggested that the scene was cut merely to appease executive concerns, that too much emphasis was placed on the morally gray perspective of the evil queen, or that reshoots with multiple directors had made the footage too disjointed to use.
Rachel Zegler, who was cast in the title role, but some diehard fans were upset that Zegler, who identifies as Colombian American, was cast to portray the Disney princess.
Regardless of the specific reason, the removal added to Rachel Zegler's sense of disillusionment. She saw piece after piece of her performance whittled away, overshadowed by behind-the-scenes disputes and overshadowed at a broader level by the emerging talk of Jenna Ortega's involvement in a separate Snow White project. Her frustration reached a breaking point during a closed-door meeting with some of the production heads. While the details remain murky, witnesses claim she demanded clarity about what the studio planned to do with the film. She asked pointedly if Disney intended to bury it, relegating it to a half-hearted theatrical launch or even indefinite storage. The executive's answers, according to these sources, were non-committal and vague. Shortly thereafter, rumors spread that Rachel Zegler had experienced an emotional breakdown on set, though at that point, most of the filming had been completed.
It got destroyed at the box office. Here's the box office numbers. The Minecraft movie made $60 million on Saturday. Snow White made $2 million.
Some accounts say she stormed off after hearing that Disney might incorporate new promotional materials that minimized her presence in favor of highlighting the evil queen or side characters. Another rumor suggested that she was also frustrated with the box office prospects. If the public was already souring on the project, how could it possibly recoup the massive investment Disney had made? And if it flopped, would she bear the blame? Complicating matters further, Gal Gadot's star power remained relatively intact, no matter the outcome. The difference in their professional standing only heightened Zegler's anxiety. Meanwhile, the news about Jenna Ortega continued to develop in the public arena. Although Disney tried to keep official statements to a minimum, Hollywood insiders kept leaking snippets of information indicating that the Ortega-led Snow White would hew more faithfully to the 1937 classic, possibly with only slight updates to reflect modern values.
In contrast to Snow White, I was really expecting the Minecraft movie to bury Snow White. I was expecting it to bury it, and it has.
This approach, ironically, was precisely what many critics of the Zegler version wanted. They argued that the essence of Snow White lay in her kindness and warmth, not necessarily a radical reimagining of her personality. As a result, excitement for the potential Ortega project swelled even before it had a set release date or a confirmed production schedule. Fans who disliked Zegler's remarks or the rumored changes to the story pinned their hopes on Disney giving them a version closer to what they remembered from childhood. For Rachel Zegler, this shift felt like a rebuke. It was as if the company she had once defended was telling her that her interpretation, her modern spin, was no longer valid. Adding to the heartbreak was the reality that Disney might not push her film with the same might of its usual marketing machine. She confided in close friends that she feared audiences would never even see the project as she had intended it, that it might be presented in a truncated form or overshadowed by negative press.
And of course, this weekend, Minecraft came out, which has absolutely dominated the box office, done significantly better than analysts even projected.
The possibility of Disney outright removing the film from its streaming plans in favor of funneling resources to Jenna Ortega's project was the final straw. In the swirl of coverage, Rachel Zegler's emotional emotional reaction was widely reported. Some outlets framed it compassionately, pointing out that actors often invest years of their lives and emotional energy into roles only to see corporate politics derail their efforts. Others were less sympathetic, painting her as naive for not realizing the precarious position she was in from the start, or chastising her for making public comments that alienated the fanbase. Social media erupted, with thousands of voices either criticizing or defending her. Hashtags referencing her meltdown trended for days. Meanwhile, Jenna Ortega maintained public silence about her rumored involvement, further fueling speculation. Observers noted that Ortega's rising status in Hollywood meant that Disney might want to court her carefully, waiting for the right moment to confirm or deny the gossip. Within the corridors of Disney, some employees expressed regret over the entire situation. They lamented that what should have been a triumphant retelling of a storied classic had turned into an ongoing crisis. The brand's reputation was at stake, not just for this film, but for future remakes as well. The repeated controversies called into question whether Disney's approach to revamping its animated library was too profit-driven, diluting the core messages that had endeared these stories to generations of fans. The ramifications went beyond Rachel Zegler. Even the extended cast and crew felt the ripple effects of the meltdown. Some worried that the negative press would damage their careers, attaching them to a project that might be labeled a fiasco. In an industry where reputation is everything, being part of a troubled film can hinder future opportunities, regardless of how well one personally performed. Crew members also feared that if Disney decided to bury the film or release it with little fanfare, their hard work would never be properly recognized. The sum of everyone's efforts, sets built, costumes designed, effects rendered, might vanish into a half-forgotten streaming release or limited theatrical run that quickly disappeared from view. A few months later, faint hope emerged. A test screening was rumored to be happening in secret. If audiences responded positively, Disney might have reason to promote the film, or at least shift the narrative away from the controversies, but test screenings also carried the risk of confirming the worst fears. What if early viewers found the storyline incoherent? What if they disliked the changes to beloved characters, or felt the comedic elements clashed with the darker reimagining of the Evil Queen? During this time, the spotlight fell repeatedly on Jenna Ortega, who was rumored to be in negotiations not just for Snow White, but also for various other high-profile projects. Entertainment columnists noted that Ortega had shown a deft ability to navigate the public eye. She was praised for her performances, generating a loyal following that saw her as both relatable and professional. Disney might have recognized in Ortega a new star who could unify audiences rather than divide them. Rachel Zegler's reaction grew increasingly introspective. She avoided giving interviews for a while, partly because she feared her words would be twisted into further controversies, and partly because she was simply exhausted from the drama. Close confidants said she continued to hope the final cut of her film would be something she could stand behind, some evidence that her performance and the work of the cast and crew had not been in vain. Yet the specter of a brand new Snow White adaptation looming on the horizon meant that her version might be regarded as a footnote in the broader Disney canon, or worse, a cautionary tale about how not to handle a remake. When Bob Iger was asked in a quarterly earnings call about the direction of upcoming live-action adaptations, he spoke vaguely of ensuring each project meets the standards and values our audiences expect from Disney. He did not mention Rachel Zegler or Snow White by name, nor did he reference Jenna Ortega. Still, the media read between the lines, interpreting his words as tacit confirmation that the Zegler version had run afoul of those standards. Further speculation ensued that an official announcement regarding the Ortega-led project was imminent. The tension escalated when a high-profile entertainment news site published a story claiming that Disney was considering indefinite postponement for Zegler's Snow White. This unconfirmed piece triggered another wave of speculation, with some anticipating that Disney might even skip a theatrical release altogether and simply drop the film on a secondary streaming platform in international markets. The idea that it might not even make the cut for Disney Plus in North America became a hot topic of online debate. Fans who had been looking forward to a fresh spin on the fairy tale lamented the potential lost opportunity, while detractors cheered what they saw as a course correction by Disney. The meltdown that Rachel Zegler supposedly experienced came to symbolize all the dashed hopes, creative struggles, and messy corporate politics wrapped up in the 2025 adaptation. She had walked into the project brimming with confidence and a determination to reshape an iconic character for the modern era. She had poured her heart into the emotional beats of the script, even when that script changed acknowledged repeatedly, but the swirling negativity and the announcement of a new Snow White remake starring Jenna Ortega felt like a public rejection of everything she had tried to bring to the role. While Zegler's personal brand might recover in time, Hollywood is rife with comebacks. The immediate future looked uncertain. She could only hope that the final version of her Snow White would land somewhere that gave it a shot at being judged on its own merits. For fans of Disney and lovers of classic fairy tales, the entire saga was bewildering. How had one of the most iconic stories in the company's history become ensnared in such a quagmire of controversy and conflict? Disney historically prided itself on delivering polished final products that exuded a certain level of magic and unity. The idea that a major adaptation of Snow White might not even premiere on the studio's proprietary platform marked a stunning departure from the standard marketing and distribution playbook. Supporters of Rachel Zegler continued to defend her, arguing that she had been unfairly targeted by critics who misunderstood her intentions or took her comments out of context. They pointed out that she was still a young performer, finding her footing in an industry known for punishing strong opinions, especially from women. They also underscored that the responsibility for the film's quality lay not solely with an actor, but also with the producers, directors, and executives who charted its course. Meanwhile, supporters of Jenna Ortega viewed her involvement as a welcome balm, a chance for Disney to return to the fundamental appeal of a princess story without the encumbrance of divisive discourse. Gal Gadot, for her part, largely stayed out of the public fray. Occasionally, she offered carefully measured statements that she had enjoyed exploring the role of the evil queen and respected her co-stars and the crew. Still, her avoidance of joint appearances with Zegler fueled suspicion that their on-set tensions had left lasting scars. As one of Hollywood's more established stars, Gadot had less to lose. Even if the film underperformed or was overshadowed by controversies, she could move on to other high-profile projects. In that sense, her situation contrasted sharply with Zegler's, further exacerbating the perceived hierarchy on set. As months rolled by, fragments of new information kept the rumor mill alive. Some said that Disney was toying with the idea of releasing both versions in different windows, letting Zegler's adaptation appear in 2025 as planned, then bringing Ortega's film into theaters a couple of years later. Others speculated that the Zegler film would be drastically re-edited to minimize the more contentious elements, perhaps cutting down the evil queen's darker improvisations. Then there was the possibility that the entire project might remain incomplete, a multi-million-dollar fiasco that Disney would rather hide away than attempt to salvage. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's emotional well-being became a topic of real concern for her closest allies. In interviews with anonymous sources from the film's production, one phrase recurred: she just wanted to do right by the character. For all the heated commentary around her public statements, those who worked with her said that she was deeply committed to portraying a Snow White who was relatable, strong, and empathetic. The heartbreak came from realizing that, after years of work, the production's legacy was overshadowed by gossip and condemnation. The meltdown might have been an outward display of frustration, but beneath it lay the disappointment that an actor experiences when her dream role becomes mired in seemingly endless turmoil. She had believed, wholeheartedly, that her performance could resonate if only given a fair chance. Yet, the swirl of rewriting, the rumored corporate doubts, and the overshadowing presence of Jenna Ortega's new remake combined to cast a long shadow over the entire endeavor. As for Jenna Ortega herself, little is definitively known about her stance or how she felt being inserted into this swirling maelstrom. Her agents and publicists maintained an official silence, presumably to avoid fanning the flames of controversy. Nonetheless, some fans worried that she might inherit a fractured audience, split between those loyal to the original 1937 film, those who supported Rachel Zegler's modern reinterpretation, and those simply fatigued by the entire spectacle. Critics noted the irony that, by the time Ortega's version came to fruition, audiences might be too jaded to embrace another retelling of Snow White, no matter how faithful or well-made. The lack of bulletins or official statements from Disney on the exact status of the Zegler version only made the rumors swirl faster. Every journalist, entertainment blogger, and fan forum had a theory. Some speculated that Disney, having sunk so much money into sets, costumes, and a star-studded cast, would not let it vanish, but might choose a carefully orchestrated quiet release, perhaps around a holiday weekend to minimize media coverage. Others believed that with so many high-profile mishaps, Disney might pull the plug and claim the the film as a tax write-off, mirroring the fate of other expensive but ill-fated productions across the industry. One of the most persistent rumors asserted that Disney had arranged a major internal screening at their corporate headquarters, inviting select employees and executives to gauge the film's salvageability. The whispers said that the reaction was lukewarm, that the film's tone shifted dramatically from scene to scene, and that, without additional reshoots, which were now impossible due to scheduling conflicts, there was no quick fix. Rachel Zegler, upon hearing secondhand accounts from this internal screening, felt a sinking realization that the film she had once been so proud of might never truly recover. For her, that knowledge stung more than any public controversy. Actors often form deep emotional connections to their roles, especially in a story as iconic as Snow White. The breakdown she experienced was thus rooted not merely in anger at the corporate machinery, but also in genuine sorrow for a performance she feared would go unseen or unappreciated. She had yearned to bring something fresh and relevant to the character, only to watch the storyline drown in negative buzz and overshadowing headlines about a new production starring Jenna Ortega. Even so, certain optimists in the industry believed that unexpected turnarounds can happen. They pointed out that some movies overcame dreadful press to find an audience or earn a critical reappraisal down the line. If the film managed to eke out positive word of mouth from those who appreciated its reinterpretation, it might shift the conversation. Critics might laud Rachel Zegler's performance, praising her for adding layers of complexity and autonomy to a princess once critiqued for being too passive. But that best-case scenario seemed like a long shot, especially with Disney seemingly pivoting its attention elsewhere. As the 2025 release window neared, the entire fiasco remained unresolved. Disney did not confirm or deny the rumors about Jenna Ortega's separate Snow White film, though more and more sources claimed an announcement was imminent. The studio also refrained from clarifying whether the Zegler adaptation would appear on Disney Plus or follow a truncated theatrical release. This vacuum of official information left Rachel Zegler waiting in limbo, wrestling with the possibility that her dream role might amount to a cinematic footnote, or worse, a cautionary example of how swiftly things could go wrong. Through all of this, the fans who had originally cheered Rachel Zegler's casting were divided. Some still rallied to her defense, arguing that the negativity and behind-the-scenes turmoil were overblown. They suspected a smear campaign or believed that her outspoken nature had made her an easy target. Others, however, echoed the broader disillusionment, disappointed that a film that promised to be a progressive reimagining had spiraled so far away from the optimism that accompanied its initial announcement. The meltdown might have been an outward display of frustration, but beneath it lay the disappointment that an actor experiences when her dream role becomes mired in seemingly endless turmoil. She had believed, wholeheartedly, that her performance could resonate if only given a fair chance. Yet, the swirl of rewriting, the rumored corporate doubts, and the overshadowing presence of Jenna Ortega's new remake combined to cast a long shadow over the entire endeavor. As for Jenna Ortega herself, little is definitively known about her stance or how she felt being inserted into this swirling maelstrom. Her agents and publicists maintained an official silence, presumably to avoid fanning the flames of controversy. Nonetheless, some fans worried that she might inherit a fractured audience, split between those loyal to the original 1937 film, those who supported Rachel Zegler's modern reinterpretation, and those simply fatigued by the entire spectacle. Critics noted the irony that, by the time Ortega's version came to fruition, audiences might be too jaded to embrace another retelling of Snow White, no matter how faithful or well-made. The lack of bulletins or official statements from Disney on the exact status of the Zegler version only made the rumors swirl faster. Every journalist, entertainment blogger, and fan forum had a theory. Some speculated that Disney, having sunk so much money into sets, costumes, and a star-studded cast, would not let it vanish, but might choose a carefully orchestrated quiet release, perhaps around a holiday weekend to minimize media coverage. Others believed that with so many high-profile mishaps, Disney might pull the plug and claim the film as a tax write-off, mirroring the fate of other expensive but ill-fated productions across the industry. One of the most persistent rumors asserted that Disney had arranged a major internal screening at their corporate headquarters, inviting select employees and executives to gauge the film's salvageability. The whispers said that the reaction was lukewarm, that the film's tone shifted dramatically from scene to scene, and that, without additional reshoots, which were now impossible due to scheduling conflicts, There was no quick fix. Rachel Zegler, upon hearing secondhand accounts from this internal screening, felt a sinking realization that the film she had once been so proud of might never truly recover. For her, that knowledge stung more than any public controversy. Actors often form deep emotional connections to their roles, especially in a story as iconic as Snow White. The breakdown she experienced was thus rooted not merely in anger at the corporate machinery, but also in genuine sorrow for a performance she feared would go unseen or unappreciated. She had yearned to bring something fresh and relevant to the character, only to watch the storyline drown in negative buzz and overshadowing headlines about a new production starring Jenna Ortega. Even so, certain optimists in the industry believed that unexpected turnarounds can happen. They pointed out that some movies overcame dreadful press to find an audience or earn a critical reappraisal down the line. If the film managed to eke out positive word of mouth from those who appreciated its reinterpretation, it might shift the conversation. Critics might laud Rachel Zegler's performance, praising her for adding layers of complexity and autonomy to a princess once critiqued for being too passive. But that best-case scenario seemed like a long shot, especially with Disney seemingly pivoting its attention elsewhere. As the 2025 release window neared, the entire fiasco remained unresolved. Disney did not confirm or deny the rumors about Jenna Ortega's separate Snow White film, though more and more sources claimed an announcement was imminent. The studio also refrained from clarifying whether the Zegler adaptation would appear on Disney Plus or follow a truncated theatrical release. This vacuum of official information left Rachel Zegler waiting in limbo, wrestling with the possibility that her dream role might amount to a cinematic footnote, or worse, a cautionary example of how swiftly things could go wrong. Through all of this, the fans who had originally cheered Rachel Zegler's casting were divided. Some still rallied to her defense, arguing that the negativity and behind-the-scenes turmoil were overblown. They suspected a smear campaign or believed that her outspoken nature had made her an easy target. Others, however, echoed the broader disillusionment, disappointed that a film that promised to be a progressive reimagining had spiraled so far away from the optimism that accompanied its initial announcement.
One subtle moment caught on camera exposed everything. In a resurfaced video that has everyone talking, Jenna Ortega approaches Rachel Zegler with enthusiasm, only to be completely ignored. As Rachel turns her head away, Jenna is left standing there with an awkward smile on her face, looking utterly helpless.
Is that required?
That single moment has become the perfect symbol of these two rising stars' very different Hollywood journeys. While Jenna rode a wave of success to the top, Rachel's career is now hanging by a thread. And it all comes down to one crucial difference in how they approach their roles. The video that everyone's talking about shows Jenna, excited and engaging, trying to connect with her peer Rachel. But instead of reciprocating, Rachel coldly turns away, leaving Jenna standing there with a forced smile. That brief interaction speaks volumes about their contrasting personalities and might explain why their careers have taken such drastically different paths.
People think I'm doing poorly, and other people think I'm doing gracefully, and I don't think I'm doing it at all.
But here's where it gets interesting. That uncomfortable moment wasn't just about two celebrities having an awkward interaction. It actually represents something much deeper happening behind the scenes in Hollywood right now. A clash between respecting beloved characters and completely reinventing them for modern audiences. This silent exchange captured on camera perfectly symbolizes the growing divide in how young stars are approaching iconic roles. On one side, there's the philosophy of honoring what made these characters beloved in the first place, while still bringing something fresh to the table. On the other, there's the approach of completely reimagining characters regardless of their established legacy, sometimes dismissing the very elements that made them connect with audiences for generations.
You know what I would say about that specifically as well? I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays. I think that's so special, but we should have our own. I don't like it when it's like a spin-off. Like, I don't want to see like Jamie Bond, you know, like I want to see just like another badass. So yeah, something like that. Definitely leave it.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story, with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie, Andrew Burnap, great dude. It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows?
I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
This tension isn't just about creative differences either. It's about the fundamental relationship between actors and the fans who support them. Do you acknowledge the emotional connection viewers have with these characters? Or do you tell audiences that their nostalgia is outdated and needs correction? As we'll see, this brief moment of rejection between two of Hollywood's rising stars wasn't just an isolated incident, but a perfect visual metaphor for the two diverging paths their careers would take. Let's rewind a bit. Jenna Ortega wasn't always the household name she is now. In fact, she'd been working steadily in the industry for years before landing her breakthrough role as Wednesday Addams. Unlike some stars who were handed major opportunities right out of the gate, Jenna put in the work, building her resume and honing her craft step by step. When she finally got her shot at playing Wednesday Addams, she didn't just show up for the paycheck. According to insiders, Jenna deeply studied the comic book version and approached the role with genuine respect for the original character. She brought something fresh to Wednesday while still honoring what made the character iconic in the first place. That dedication paid off big time. Wednesday became a global phenomenon and broke viewing records for Netflix.
I feel like unrelatable, or I feel like sometimes I have to speak differently or carry myself differently in order to assimilate myself.
Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler was catapulted to fame when she was cast as Maria in Spielberg's West Side Story and then landed the coveted role of Snow White in Disney's live-action remake. It seemed like a dream start to a promising career, but things quickly took a turn. What happened next shocked everyone in the industry. As Snow White began production, Rachel started making comments that left Disney executives increasingly concerned. In interviews, she openly criticized the original 1937 animated classic, calling it weird and dismissing core elements of the beloved story. The original cartoon came out in 1937 and very evidently so, Rachel said in one particularly controversial interview. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
So, when I tell you that it's hard, I just mean to be inside my brain.
She went on to declare that her version of Snow White isn't going to be dreaming about true love, but instead would focus on becoming a leader. While this might sound progressive on paper, it completely missed why generations of audiences have connected with Snow White in the first place. Even more shocking was Rachel's admission that she was scared of the original cartoon, claiming she watched it once and never picked it up again. For many fans, this felt like a slap in the face, an actress taking on an iconic role while seemingly having contempt for the source material. Compare that to Jenna Ortega's approach to Wednesday Addams. While also modernizing the character, Jenna spoke repeatedly about her respect for the original and her desire to honor what made Wednesday special. The contrast couldn't be more stark. One actress embracing the legacy she was building upon, another dismissing it.
I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you. Not only are you being casted in a classic film to remake it, but you don't seemingly like your own character. So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
But there's even more to this story that most people don't know about. Behind closed doors, both actresses were reportedly approached for a secret Disney animation project codenamed Blue Wave. This ambitious film was meant to be Disney's answer to Shrek, bringing together various fairy tale characters in one universe. According to industry insiders, the project took a controversial approach, heavily focusing on gender-swapping traditional characters and pushing what some considered an ideological agenda rather than focusing on storytelling. When Jenna Ortega learned about the direction, she reportedly had serious concerns. In a rare moment of Hollywood honesty, Jenna has spoken out about the trend of gender-swapping established characters instead of creating new, original, strong female roles. I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays. I think that's so special, but we should have our own. Jenna said in an interview. I don't like it when it's a spin-off. I don't want to see like James Bond as a woman. I want to see just another badass. This principled stance allegedly led to Jenna walking away from Blue Wave, choosing integrity over what would have been a major paycheck. Meanwhile, Rachel was reportedly fully on board with the project's direction, creating tension between the two rising stars.
To everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
The contrast between their approaches became even clearer as Snow White's production troubles mounted. After Rachel's controversial comments and growing backlash, Disney faced increasing pressure. The film's budget reportedly ballooned to over $200 million, making it one of the most expensive fairy tale adaptations ever made. Yet despite the massive investment, insider reports suggested the studio was deeply concerned about the film's prospects. Those concerns proved justified when Snow White finally released. Despite IMAX screens and a massive marketing push, the film struggled to connect with audiences. Critics called it soulless, and fans stayed away in droves. In its second weekend, box office numbers collapsed by over 50%, a disaster for a film with such a massive budget. Meanwhile, Jenna Ortega's star continued to rise. While Rachel was dealing with the Snow White fallout, Jenna was taking risks with projects like Death of a Unicorn, an R-rated horror comedy with Paul Rudd. Though not breaking box office records, these choices were building Jenna a reputation as a serious actress with impressive range. But here's where Rachel's troubles really began. Following Snow White's disappointing performance, Rachel reportedly began struggling to land new roles. Industry insiders whispered that studios were hesitant to cast her, fearing her controversial statements might alienate audiences. In what many saw as a desperate move, Rachel publicly campaigned for a role in the Star Wars universe, using the bizarre justification that her initials, RZ, matched an RZ-1 A-Wing starfighter from Star Wars lore. As a fan of the comics, I would like to throw my hat in the ring to voice Shara Bay, mother of Poe Dameron, because her ship was an RZ-1, my initials, she posted. Fans quickly mocked this reasoning, seeing it as a transparent and somewhat desperate attempt to land a role in a major franchise. Serious actors typically don't campaign for roles by pointing out coincidental initial matches. They let their work speak for itself. The final blow came when Rachel was reportedly dropped from Paddington 3. While the official reason given was scheduling conflicts due to the actor's strike, industry insiders noted that many other SAG actors remained attached to the project. The timing, right after the Snow White controversy, suggested there might be more to the story. Rachel's political statements further complicated matters. After posting Free Palestine on social media during a particularly tense period in Middle Eastern politics, Rachel faced both support and significant backlash. While actors certainly have the right to express their political views, the timing and manner of her statements created additional controversy around an already struggling career. In stark contrast, Jenna Ortega has spoken thoughtfully about the intersection of Hollywood and politics, noting that the industry's focus on being politically correct sometimes leads to a loss of humanity and integrity because it lacks honesty. This measured approach has helped Jenna avoid the kind of polarizing reception that has plagued Rachel. The industry has taken notice of their different paths. When Jenna was reportedly offered a role in Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean revival, she declined. Another example of her selecting roles based on artistic merit rather than just big paychecks or franchise potential. While Rachel struggles to book new projects and deals with the fallout from Snow White, Jenna continues to be one of the most in-demand young actresses in Hollywood. Her principled stands and thoughtful approach to her craft have earned her not just commercial success, but also respect within the industry. So what does this all mean? In an industry often criticized for valuing style over substance, Jenna Ortega's rise represents something refreshing. An actress who respects the characters she portrays and the fans who love them. She understands that modernizing beloved characters doesn't mean dismissing what made them special in the first place. Rachel Zegler's story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of dismissing beloved source material and alienating the very fans you're trying to entertain. Her struggle to land roles after Snow White suggests that studios are paying attention to how actors discuss the properties they're part of. The video of Jenna being ignored by Rachel now takes on an almost symbolic meaning. It represents the two paths available to young stars in Hollywood today: respecting legacy while bringing something new, or dismissing the past in favor of reinvention at any cost. In the end, Jenna didn't need to say a word to end Rachel's career. She did it through her choices, choosing integrity over ideology, respect over reinvention, and authenticity over agenda. While Rachel struggles to recover from the Snow White debacle, Jenna's career continues to flourish. And that might be the most powerful statement of all. What do you think about this Hollywood drama? Do you side with Jenna's approach to respecting original characters, or do you think Rachel had the right idea about modernizing classics? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest celebrity insights and industry analysis.